A 5,000-year-old Sumerian object sits in a museum, but NASA won't touch it. You've probably been told that ancient people were simple, their tools crude, their knowledge limited. But this object suggests otherwise. In 2008, NASA released a photograph of a small, circular object on Mars, and some researchers claim it bears a striking resemblance to a Sumerian artifact that has puzzled archaeologists for decades. This is the story of a 5,000-year-old object that challenges everything we think we know about ancient technology. Why NASA still hasn't explained it. The object itself is unassuming, carved from stone, no larger than a fist, covered in markings that don't match any known script. Mainstream scholars see it as a bowl or a ceremonial seal, but there are features that don't fit that simple explanation. Precision angles, symmetrical grooves, a design that looks almost mechanical. If you dismiss this object as a primitive relic, you'll miss the evidence that ancient Sumerians may have possessed knowledge we're only rediscovering today. The Sumerian object doesn't just change the story, it rewrites the timeline of human achievement. And the more closely we look, the more it forces us to ask an uncomfortable question. What if our history is far stranger than we've been told? To understand why this object matters, we have to travel back more than 5,000 years to a land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. This was Sumer, often called the cradle of civilization. It was here that the first cities rose from the desert, where writing was invented, where mathematics and astronomy took their first steps. The Sumerians developed complex irrigation systems, built towering ziggurats, and created a legal code that would influence empires for millennia. Their achievements were so advanced that for centuries, historians struggled to believe they were real. Yet the archaeological record is clear. By around 4000 BCE, Sumer was a thriving, sophisticated society. It is within this context that our object was found. Unearthed in the ruins of an ancient city, it was initially catalogued as a simple stone bowl, a household item from a culture known for its craftsmanship. But when researchers began to examine it more closely, they noticed something odd. The object was not crude or primitive. Its surfaces were smooth, its edges precise, its proportions almost perfect. It did not look like something made by hand, but rather by a machine. This is the puzzle at the heart of our story. How did a civilization that predates the pyramids produce an object that seems to require advanced technology? Some researchers suggest that the Sumerians had access to tools and techniques we have yet to understand. Others speculate that the object may be evidence of a lost technology, or perhaps something even more extraordinary. But before we leap to conclusions, we must consider the facts. The Sumerians were brilliant, but they were not superhuman. They built their civilization with stone, wood, and bronze, not with machines. So how did they create something so seemingly out of place? The answer, like the object itself, remains tantalizingly out of reach. But as we will see, this is only the beginning of the mystery. The object's design is not the only thing that defies explanation. Its markings, its purpose, and its connection to a photograph taken by a NASA rover on Mars all point to something far more complex. Now, let's look closely at the object itself. What do we actually know about it? It's small, about the size of a human fist, carved from a dark, dense stone, possibly diorite or basalt, materials that were prized in ancient Sumer for their durability. Its surface is smooth, almost polished, and across it run a series of precise geometric lines. Some of these lines form concentric circles, others are straight, intersecting at angles that seem too exact to be accidental. The object is often described as a bowl, but that description feels too simple. It's more like a shallow, circular dish with a raised rim and a flat base. But it's the markings that truly set it apart. They're not random scratches or decorative patterns. They have a deliberate, almost mechanical quality. The lines are evenly spaced, the curves are consistent, and the overall design suggests a level of precision we don't normally associate with a 5,000-year-old artifact. So what was it for? Mainstream archaeologists have offered a few interpretations. Some say it was a ceremonial bowl used in religious rituals. Others suggest it was a measuring device, perhaps for grain or liquids. A few have even proposed it was a type of seal used to stamp designs onto clay or wax. These are all plausible explanations, grounded in what we know about Sumerian culture. But here's the problem. None of them fully account for the object's most striking feature, the precision of its geometry. Think about it. If this were a simple bowl, why would its makers go to the trouble of carving lines that are perfectly straight and so evenly spaced? Why would they create circles that are so mathematically consistent? The tools available to the Sumerians, copper chisels, stone hammers, abrasive sand, would have made such precision incredibly difficult to achieve. And yet, here it is. Some researchers have pointed out that the object's proportions seem to follow a specific mathematical ratio, one that we wouldn't formally codify until thousands of years later. If that's true, it would mean the Sumerians had a working knowledge of geometry that we've only recently begun to appreciate. But is that a leap too far? Or is it possible that we're looking at an artifact that simply doesn't fit our neat timeline of human development? That's the question that lingers, and it's the reason why this object, as small and unassuming as it is, has become a focal point for the debate over ancient technology. Because if it was just a bowl, why does it have precision that shouldn't exist? But the Sumerian object isn't just a puzzle locked in a museum display case. In 2008, NASA released a photograph taken by one of its Mars rovers, a small circular object lying on the red planet's surface. And to some observers, that object bore a striking resemblance to the one we've been examining. The photo was part of the rover's routine imaging, capturing the Martian terrain in black and white. But when the image made its way online, a different kind of investigation began. Enthusiasts and researchers zoomed in, enhanced the contrast, and compared the shape to known artifacts. The resemblance, they argued, was too close to be dismissed as pareidolia, the human tendency to see patterns where none exist. Now, it's important to be clear, NASA has not publicly commented on any connection between the Martian object and the Sumerian artifact. The agency's official stance when asked about such anomalies is typically that they are natural rock formations, shaped by wind and erosion over millions of years. But that explanation hasn't satisfied everyone. Why, some ask, does the object appear so symmetrical? Why does it seem to have a central hole, similar to the Sumerian piece? And why hasn't NASA released a higher resolution image or conducted a closer examination? Proponents of the connection argue that the agency's silence is telling. They suggest that NASA is either unsure what THE object is, or that it doesn't want to engage in a debate. Could lead to uncomfortable questions about ancient technology. But there's another possibility, that the object is simply a rock, and the resemblance is a coincidence, a trick of light and shadow on a distant world. The rovers have been exploring Mars for over 2 decades, and in that time, they've sent back thousands of images. It's statistically likely that some of them will look like something familiar, even if they're nothing more than stone. So where does that leave us? The Sumerian object remains a mystery, and the Martian photo adds another layer of intrigue. But we have to be careful not to let speculation outrun evidence. What we know for certain is that the Sumerians created objects of remarkable craftsmanship, and that we still don't fully understand their purpose. What we don't know is whether that purpose extended beyond Earth. Is the Mars object a coincidence or evidence of a shared technology? The question hangs in the air, unanswered. And until NASA provides a more detailed explanation, or until a future mission gets a closer look, the mystery will persist. So which theory holds up to scrutiny, and which falls apart? The most famous explanation is the one that gives this documentary its name, the ancient astronaut theory. According to this view, certain artifacts from the distant past are evidence that visitors from elsewhere, or beings our ancestors perceived as gods, shared advanced knowledge with early human civilizations. Proponents point to the Sumerians' sudden leap in astronomy, mathematics, and engineering, and they see objects like this one, a sign that some technology was handed down rather than invented. Some researchers suggest the object shows an understanding of principles that wouldn't be formally described on Earth for thousands of years. But the ancient astronaut theory is just that, a theory. And many archaeologists caution against reading too much into a single artifact. A more grounded explanation suggests the object is exactly what it appears to be, a ceremonial vessel or a measuring instrument, beautifully made but entirely human. The precision we admire might simply be the work of skilled craftsmen who had generations of experience. After all, Sumerian artisans produced cylinder seals with intricate designs so small they can barely be seen with the naked eye. If they could carve those, what else might they have been capable of? Then there are the skeptics who say the entire mystery rests on misinterpretation. They point out that the Mars photograph comes from a rover which has captured thousands of images, and pareidolia, the brain's tendency to see familiar shapes in random patterns, makes it all too easy to spot a bowl-shaped rock in a Martian landscape. The same psychological shortcut that makes us see faces in clouds could turn an ordinary stone into an extraordinary relic. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere in between. Archaeologists remind us that ancient does not mean primitive. The Sumerians invented writing, the wheel, and a sophisticated system of mathematics based on the number 60, a system we still use today to measure time and angles. It would not be strange for such a civilization to produce objects that look surprisingly modern to our eyes. What makes this object compelling, then, is not that it proves the existence of aliens. It is that it reminds us how much we still do not know about our own past. Every artifact is a fragment of a larger story, and this one refuses to fit neatly into the timeline we have constructed. The Sumerian object is not alone. Across the ancient world, there are artifacts that seem to belong to a different timeline. Objects that, if taken at face value, suggest our ancestors knew more than we give them credit for. Take the Antikythera mechanism, recovered from a shipwreck off the Greek island of Antikythera in 1901. It's a corroded bronze device, no larger than a shoebox, but inside it are dozens of interlocking gears. For decades, researchers believed that such precision gearing didn't exist until the 14th century, more than 1,000 years after the mechanism was built. Modern scans have revealed it could calculate eclipses, track the movements of the sun and moon, and even predict the timing of the Olympic Games. It is, in essence, an ancient analog computer. Mainstream science now accepts it as real, but its sophistication still defies the conventional story of ancient technology. Then there's the Baghdad battery, a set of clay jars discovered in Iraq in the 1930s, each containing a copper cylinder and an iron rod. When filled with an acidic liquid like vinegar, they can produce a small electric current. Some researchers suggest they may have been used for electroplating, though no one knows for certain. The jars are dated to around 200 BC to 200 AD, but the idea that ancient people harnessed electricity remains a controversial one. And yet, the objects exist. They were found, they were measured, and they still puzzle us. What do these artifacts have in common with the Sumerian object? They all share a troubling pattern. They are physical evidence of capabilities that, according to the standard timeline, should not have existed. Each one is an anomaly, a piece that doesn't fit the puzzle. Skeptics argue that we're misreading them, that the Antikythera mechanism was a one-off, that the Baghdad battery was just a storage jar. But the sheer number of these outliers raises a question. What if they're not exceptions? What if they're fragments of a larger, forgotten knowledge, a technology that was lost or deliberately hidden? The Sumerian object, with its unexplained precision and its possible echo on Mars, becomes part of this bigger mystery. It's not just one artifact that doesn't fit, it's a growing collection, and each new discovery forces us to reconsider the past. What if these objects are pieces of a larger puzzle? And what if that puzzle, once assembled, reveals a history far more advanced than we ever imagined? That's the question that keeps researchers returning to this small stone artifact and to the Mars photograph that may or may not echo it. We may never have a definitive answer. The Sumerian object may one day be explained as a cleverly made bowl, or it may remain an outlier, a stubborn reminder that our history is not as simple as we like to believe. Either way, it has already done something remarkable. It has made us question. And that, perhaps, is the true power of an unexplained artifact. It doesn't give us answers. It gives us the courage to keep asking. If you've enjoyed this journey into the unknown and you want to follow the next clue, the next discovery, the next artifact that doesn't fit, consider subscribing. The story is far from over, and the next piece of the puzzle might be just one video away.